Ethan Cross stepped off the shuttle and onto the polished landing platform of the interstellar diplomatic hub. The city spread out beneath him like a glowing tapestry, full of towering spires and floating walkways. Alien ships of every shape and color hovered in the sky, each one more strange than the last. Ethan had seen a lot in his life, from human battlefields to corporate negotiations on distant planets. But nothing quite prepared him for this. He adjusted the strap of his messenger bag and glanced at the small communicator clipped to his belt. Humans had been invited to negotiate trade agreements, resource sharing, and cultural exchanges with the alien monarchy that ruled this sector. The crown was young, ambitious, and notoriously difficult to please. And yet Ethan knew one thing. Humans had something no alien species could ever truly replicate: patience, courage, and the ability to see things clearly in moments of chaos. The shuttle doors opened fully, and a delegation of alien guards stepped forward. Tall, blue-skinned creatures with luminous eyes. They studied Ethan with polite suspicion. Their movements were precise, almost ceremonial, as though every gesture had been practiced for centuries. One of them, a middle-aged officer with a silver sash across his chest, stepped forward and bowed in a strict, formal way. "Welcome, human," the officer said in a voice that vibrated slightly, as if tuned to some frequency humans couldn't detect. "You are expected in the royal audience hall immediately. The princess awaits." Ethan nodded, keeping his expression calm. He followed the officer through the long corridors of the palace, noting the intricate patterns of light that shifted across the walls, almost like they were alive. Alien courtiers whispered among themselves, glancing at him curiously. The humans' reputation as bold explorers and strong negotiators had reached even this far corner of the galaxy. Some admired them. Others looked at them as primitive. Ethan didn't mind. Finally, they reached the massive double doors of the royal audience hall. The officer gestured, and the doors swung open silently. Ethan stepped inside. The hall was enormous, circular, with a ceiling that glowed like a pale sun. At the far end, seated on a throne carved from a single crystalline structure, was Princess Lysera. She was 20 years old, slender, with striking violet eyes and hair that shimmered like liquid metal. Her expression was sharp, confident, and undeniably royal. She said, her voice smooth and musical. "The human has arrived." Ethan inclined his head slightly in greeting. "Princess Lysera, it is an honor to meet you." The princess laughed softly, a sound like wind over glass. "Honor? Is that what your kind values most? Weakness disguised as manners?" She leaned forward, resting her chin on her delicate hand. "Tell me, human, how does your species survive without wings, scales, or any natural defenses? I suppose your weapons and bravery are your only tools." The hall fell silent. Courtiers and guards exchanged glances. Ethan could feel the tension. He knew that in this alien court, public insults were not only common, they were a test of strength, cleverness, and composure. Many diplomats before him had snapped, argued, or even resorted to threats. Most had failed spectacularly. Ethan did nothing. He straightened his back, kept his hands at his sides, and simply looked at Lysera. He did not speak. A whisper ran through the hall. The alien courtiers were shocked. No one had ever ignored the princess so completely. Lysera's lips curved in a small, calculating smile, thinking she had struck a nerve. Yet Ethan did not flinch, did not respond, and did not even glance away. "Human?" she said again, a hint of impatience in her tone. "Do you not care what I say?" Ethan's voice was calm, even, and quiet, but it carried easily across the hall. "I care about what matters," he said simply. "Insults are not one of them." The silence deepened. A few of Lysera's advisors shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to react. The princess herself blinked, startled that this human refused to be provoked. You dare speak to me like that?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. Her violet eyes narrowed, curious, frustrated, and slightly offended all at once. "I speak as I must," Ethan replied. "I did not come here to argue or to compete for your approval. I came to represent my people, and if our nations are to work together, I will do so with respect, not ego." For a moment, the room felt as if time itself had stopped. Lysera opened her mouth to retort but found no words that could unsettle him. Her pride bristled, but something else flickered in her expression. Curiosity. "Interesting," she said finally, leaning back and resting her hand on her throne. "You do not fight. You do not plead. You simply ignore. Fascinating." Ethan nodded slightly and took a step back. Without a word, he turned and walked toward the exit. His pace was steady, confident, and utterly calm. Every eye in the hall followed him. Some of the alien guards tensed, expecting an attack, but Ethan did not even glance at them. He simply walked. Lysera's eyebrows shot up. She had never seen anyone, alien or otherwise, walk away from her in such a manner. This human, with no weapons and no supernatural strength, had dared to defy her without a single word of disrespect or aggression. The murmurs in the hall began quietly, and then grew louder. "Has he no fear?" one courtier whispered. "No shame?" another asked. Ethan reached the hall doors and stopped. He turned his head slightly, looking back at Lysera. His eyes were steady, unwavering. "Words alone do not define strength," he said. Then he stepped through the doors and into the corridor beyond. Behind him, the court was silent. Even Lysera remained quiet for a moment, staring after him. She had been insulted countless times before, yet this human's calmness had somehow made her own words feel hollow. The lesson was clear. He was not afraid, and he was not impressed by titles or threats. In the days that followed, Ethan's quiet composure became a topic of discussion throughout the palace. Aliens debated what this meant. Some argued that the human was foolish, lacking the pride or cunning to survive in court politics. Others began to suspect that his calmness hid a deeper strength, a power the aliens did not understand. Meanwhile, Ethan went about his duties without fanfare. He met with human diplomats, observed the court, and made careful notes about customs, traditions, and weaknesses he could exploit, not for war, but for negotiation. He had learned long ago that patience and observation were more powerful than anger or aggression. Lysera, for her part, found herself thinking about the human more often than she would admit. She had expected anger, fear, or at least some display of submission. Instead, he had done the impossible. He had walked away. And yet he had not lost her attention. In fact, he had gained it. That night in her private chambers, Lysera could not shake the memory of his steady gaze, his calm movements, and the quiet dignity that seemed to radiate from him. She had spent her whole life being respected or feared by others, yet here was a human, a stranger, who had earned a kind of authority simply by refusing to play the expected game. "What is it about him?" she asked aloud to no one. "Why is he not afraid? Why does he not bow? Why does he walk away?" Even her advisors did not have answers. Humans were unpredictable in ways aliens could not always understand, and perhaps that was exactly the point. Ethan returned to the human embassy later that evening. He wrote reports, updated his superiors, and reflected on the day's events. In his calm mind, the insult from the princess was already irrelevant. He had done exactly what was required: maintain dignity, avoid unnecessary conflict, and observe. Humans had survived for millennia not because they were the strongest, fastest, or most fearsome species. They survived because they were clever, adaptable, and patient. They survived because they knew when to fight and when to walk away. And as he rested that night, Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. The princess's insult was a small event in the grand scheme of things. What mattered was how it would shape the future, and how humans would show their true strength in a world that was not yet ready to understand them. By the time the city lights of the alien hub blinked out one by one under the twin moons, a single truth had already begun to spread quietly through the palace. Humans were not to be underestimated, and Princess Lysera, for the first time, felt a stir of unease and fascination. The hum of the medical bay settled into a quiet rhythm, but the air was thick with tension. The alien doctors moved with fluid precision around Alex, carefully analyzing his vitals and bones. Every few moments they whispered to each other, their language flowing like music and light combined. Their scanning devices blinked, flickered, and pulsed with new readings, but no matter what they measured, Alex remained remarkably stable. Alex lay on the platform, propped slightly upright by delicate supports the aliens had placed under his back. He flexed his fingers slowly, testing his mobility. Every joint ached, every crack in his bones sent sharp signals through his body, but he ignored it. Pain, he had learned long ago, was mostly in the mind. You could let it control you, or you could push forward. The lead doctor, tall and translucent, approached the holographic screen that displayed Alex's skeletal structure. We have analyzed the fractures, it said, voice low and musical. 17 major breaks, compression fractures in the spine, rib and limb damage, internal organ impact. All indicators suggest imminent systemic failure, yet it paused, the alien equivalent of hesitation. Yet the human remains alert, coherent, and communicative. Alex shrugged. I've been in worse, and survived. His voice carried a dry humor that seemed to amuse him more than anyone else. You don't die just because something's broken. You die when you give up, and giving up is boring. The smaller, violet-eyed doctor tilted its multiple eyes at him. You speak of survival, as if it is a choice? Alex nodded carefully, mindful of his cracked ribs. Pretty much. You can choose panic, or you can choose to move forward no matter what. The aliens exchanged glances. Choice? The concept itself was alien. Most species reacted to injury with instinct, panic, or immediate reliance on their biology to recover. Humans could decide. To endure, to act, to push beyond what seemed possible. A slender, six-limbed assistant floated near Alex, holding a device that could repair tissue almost instantly. Its tendrils hovered above him, unsure how to proceed. How do you tolerate pain at this level? Alex grinned, though it hurt. Tolerance? Not really. You just ignore it. Focus on what you need to do. I've learned the hard way. The lead doctor tilted its head. Explain. We are intrigued. Most species with similar injuries collapse. You thrive despite trauma? Alex gave a small shrug. Not thrive. Just survive. And sometimes you do both. His grin widened. Pain is temporary. Stubbornness is forever. The alien doctors buzzed quietly among themselves. They began recording everything. The patterns of his speech, the way he moved, the subtle ways his body tried to stabilize itself. Their curiosity was no longer clinical. It was personal. One of the assistants asked, Have you always been this resilient? Or is this unique to you? Alex laughed softly, a sound that echoed faintly against the metallic walls. Not unique. Humans, we get hurt. A lot, but we keep going, always. He paused and tapped his chest lightly. Some call it stubborn. Some call it crazy. Me? I just call it living. The aliens didn't fully understand, but they noted the pattern. Humans could endure far beyond what their bodies seemed capable of. Their survival was not just biology, it was mental, emotional, deliberate. The lead doctor finally leaned close, almost brushing Alex's shoulder with a translucent limb. Your physiology defies expectations. Your species may possess regenerative mechanisms beyond our understanding. Your mental fortitude may be equally significant, Alex smirked. Glad I could help your research. You'll probably be writing papers about me for years. A small ripple of sound like laughter passed between the other doctors. It was rare they did not laugh at suffering. Yet here was a human, speaking casually about 17 broken bones, joking about surviving and somehow charming them. Tell us about your past injuries, the violet-eyed doctor said, its tone cautious, almost pleading. Perhaps patterns exist? Alex exhaled slowly. Every breath sent a jolt through his fractured ribs, but he ignored it. Sure. There was the frost moon I told you about before, he began, where I fell into a frozen crater. That was bad. 3 ribs cracked, ankle fractured, arm bent wrong. But I climbed out. Walked 40 kilometers. Found help. He paused, letting the story sink in. Then there was the desert planet. Sandstorms, heat, radiation exposure. Burned skin, cracked bones, minor organ damage, survived. Then, well, he waved his hand vaguely. Other stuff. Crashes, falls, fights. Nothing that broke me entirely. The alien doctor scanned his eyes, his body, and even the subtle muscle tension that betrayed fatigue. Remarkable. Patterns indicate repeated trauma, yet recovery successful. Pain response controlled. How do you manage? Alex smiled faintly. We humans, we adapt. Mind over matter. Focus on the next step, not the pain. Accept help when we need it. And sometimes, we just laugh at the situation. The assistants shared a quiet communication. Something was shifting. The aliens had studied courage, resilience, survival, and adaptability. None of it had prepared them for the human combination of physical durability, mental determination, and humor under pressure. Your species may be unique, the lead doctor said finally. Perhaps humans are designed to endure extremes. Alex chuckled. Designed? Nah, we're just stubborn and a little crazy. Keeps life interesting. One of the assistants, curious beyond measure, began to perform controlled tests. Nothing painful, just small movements, gentle stress monitoring, and measuring subtle physiological responses. Alex tolerated it, even made small jokes about the machines. Careful. You'll poke an eye out, or a rib, or 17 of them, the lead doctor observed silently. Observe. His humor under stress. Unusual. Perhaps mental resilience is as important as physical survival. Alex tilted his head. Could be. Pain is bad, yes. Fear is worse. But knowing when to act, that's the key. The alien doctors began to discuss what they were seeing. This species combines extreme trauma tolerance with adaptive thinking. Unusual combination? Yes, another said. And humor. A coping mechanism. Perhaps essential. Alex caught part of this and raised an eyebrow. You're analyzing my jokes now? Guess I'm famous. He laughed softly, careful not to twist his broken jaw. The lead doctor finally spoke to him directly. Human, your actions, your behavior. It teaches us, perhaps. Your species has capabilities we do not yet comprehend. Alex shrugged, letting the words sink in. Teach you? Sure, I survive, I talk, I laugh. You can learn from that if you want. The aliens paused, studying him more intently than any patient before. Here was a being who should have been incapacitated. A being who should have been screaming or in shock. Yet Alex was curious, alert, and teaching them about his species simply by existing. Hours passed. Slowly, the medical bay lights dimmed to simulate night cycles. Alex, exhausted but alert, lay back, letting the gentle support hold him steady. The aliens took shifts monitoring him, whispering and exchanging data. Every now and then Alex spoke softly, telling small stories of previous injuries and adventures. Each tale was a lesson. Humans endured because they could choose to endure. Humans survived because they refused to give up. Humans were remarkable. Finally, the lead doctor approached Alex once more. Its tone was calm but carried a note of respect. Human, you are extraordinary. Perhaps your species is underestimated by the galaxy. Your resilience, your humor, your fortitude, all are remarkable. Alex smiled faintly, tired but pleased. Thanks. You'll find humans are like that a lot. You just have to meet one or survive 17 broken bones with them to know. The doctor's eyes glimmered. We will record, study, learn, your species. We must understand further. Alex grinned, wincing at a rebuff. Good luck. Humans aren't easy to understand. That's half the fun. The medical base settled into quiet again. Alex drifted into a light rest, alert even in sleep. The aliens watched him closely, their curiosity now bordering on fascination. Every signal, every breath, every tiny reaction was a lesson in human endurance. For the first time, the alien doctors realized that humans were not just another species to study. Humans were something different, something extraordinary, something the galaxy had underestimated. And Alex, in his usual casual manner, whispered to himself as he drifted into a brief sleep. Just another day.